Ladies and gentlemen, today I invite you to explore a truth many people overlook. The truth that your most powerful transformation begins the moment you stop living behind masks and start living from your inner truth. We spend so much of our lives shaping ourselves to meet expectations, adjusting our identity to earn approval, and trying to fit into spaces where we don't truly belong. But beneath all of that, there is a deeper, more honest version of you waiting to be recognized. Today's message is not about becoming someone new. It's about returning to the self you were always meant to be. External approval weakens your identity in ways that often go unnoticed because it happens slowly, quietly, and subtly. It begins the moment you start measuring your actions against the reactions of others. At first, it seems harmless wanting someone to appreciate your effort, acknowledge your progress, or validate your choices. But over time, this desire grows into dependency, and that dependency becomes a filter through which you view yourself. Instead of asking, "Is this right for me?" you start asking, "Will they approve of this?" And with that shift, a part of your identity begins to dissolve. When you constantly seek approval, you start molding yourself to fit into the expectations around you. Every opinion, every judgment, every passing comment starts to influence the way you think and behave. You adjust your voice, your personality, your ambitions, even your dreams, not based on what feels true to you, but based on what you hope will bring acceptance. Without noticing it, you start living a life shaped by the desires of others rather than your own inner direction. The more you adapt, the further you drift from who you really are. This type of approval-based living creates a habit where you evaluate your self-worth through external responses. When people praise you, you feel uplifted. When they criticize or ignore you, your confidence shrinks. Your emotional stability becomes tied to how others perceive you, leaving you vulnerable to their shifting moods and opinions. You start feeling anxious about disappointing people, afraid of rejection, and overly concerned with how you appear. Instead of building a strong inner foundation, you build a fragile outer shell that depends on external reinforcement to stay standing. The identity you present to the world becomes a crafted version of yourself, polished, adjusted, edited. It may impress others, but it leaves you disconnected from your authentic feelings. You begin to lose the natural confidence that comes from knowing who you are. Your decisions are no longer yours, your voice becomes quieter, your boundaries weaken. Every time you choose approval over honesty, you give away a piece of your individuality. You gradually learn to silence your own needs and replace them with what others expect, until you can no longer distinguish what you genuinely want from what you've been conditioned to seek. What makes this even more damaging is that external approval is unpredictable. People change, preferences shift, expectations rise. Something that gains approval today might be judged tomorrow. You end up chasing a moving target, constantly adjusting yourself, but never fully arriving at a place of stability. This inconsistency keeps you in a loop, trying harder, pleasing more, pretending more, yet feeling more insecure with each attempt. The more you depend on approval, the more powerless you feel without it. You forget that your worth was never meant to be decided by anyone else. Another consequence is that your growth becomes limited. Fear of disapproval stops you from taking risks, exploring new directions, or expressing unconventional ideas. You avoid opportunities that might attract judgment. You settle for comfort rather than challenge. You shrink your potential so you don't stand out too much. Approval creates invisible boundaries around your life, making you live smaller just to avoid rejection. Instead of becoming who you are capable of being, you become who others prefer you to be. Over time, this pattern disconnects you from your inner guidance, the inner voice that knows what is right for you. When that voice gets buried beneath layers of expectations, it becomes difficult to recognize your real desires. You might find yourself in careers you didn't choose, relationships that don't align with you, habits that don't reflect your values, or a lifestyle that feels heavy and unfulfilling. The exhaustion you feel isn't from doing too much, it's from living out of alignment with yourself. What weakens your identity is not just the act of seeking approval, but the internal message you reinforce each time you seek it. Who I am is not enough unless someone else approves of it. This belief undermines your confidence at its core. It makes you doubt your instincts, second guess your decisions, and depend on external confirmation before trusting yourself. It creates an inner conflict where your true self wants to emerge, but your fear of disapproval keeps pulling you back. When you rely on approval to define your value, you unintentionally give others the power to shape your identity. You let them decide what is acceptable, what is worthy, and what is right for you. But no one else can determine your purpose, your path, or your truth. External approval may feel comforting for a moment, but it weakens the foundation of your identity by placing your sense of self in the hands of people who can never fully understand you. You have two selves, the outer persona and the inner truth, and the tension between these two shapes almost everything you experience in life. The outer persona is the version of you that interacts with the world, the face you show, the behaviors you choose, the image you maintain. It is influenced by expectations, social norms, roles you've learned to play, and the desire to fit into the environments surrounding you. This outer self is not fake, it's simply adaptive. It helps you navigate society, build relationships, and function within different spaces. But because it is shaped by external forces, it often hides the deeper reality of who you are within. The inner truth, on the other hand, is the part of you that exists beneath all layers, the quiet, unfiltered, unedited core self. It holds your real feelings, your natural instincts, your suppressed desires, your honest thoughts, and the unique traits that define your individuality. It isn't interested in approval or performance. It simply wants authenticity. But this true self often stays hidden because it feels too raw, too vulnerable, or too different from what you think the world expects of you. So you protect it by placing the outer persona in front, hoping it will make life easier, smoother, or more acceptable. The challenge begins when the persona becomes overdeveloped and the inner truth becomes neglected. You start living in a way that pleases the outside world but disconnects you from your inner world. You say things you don't fully mean, take paths that don't feel aligned, and present emotions that don't match what you're experiencing inside. Over time, this creates a split, a distance between who you appear to be and who you actually are. People may see confidence while you feel uncertain. They may see calmness while you feel overwhelmed. They may see control while your inner truth is quietly asking for change. This separation doesn't happen instantly. It builds slowly as you adapt to expectations. You act a certain way to avoid criticism. You hide your fears so no one sees your weaknesses. You downplay your strengths so you don't threaten anyone's comfort. The persona becomes a tool for acceptance, but it also becomes a barrier to self-discovery. The more you rely on it, the harder it becomes to remember what your inner truth even feels like. Yet the inner truth never disappears. Even when hidden, it communicates through subtle signals. You might feel uneasy in situations that technically should make you happy. You might sense frustration when following a path that everyone else approves of. You might feel a quiet longing for something more meaningful, more aligned, or more honest. These signals are not mistakes. They are reminders that the inner truth is waiting to be recognized. When you ignore these signals repeatedly, life starts to feel heavy, repetitive, or directionless because a part of you knows you are not living from a place of authenticity. The outer persona is necessary, you need it to interact with the world. But when it becomes the only self you express, it creates an internal pressure. You feel like you're performing instead of living. You start measuring your worth based on reactions instead of personal understanding. You lose touch with your natural preferences, your organic choices, and the real reasons behind your actions. You become busy maintaining an image while the inner truth quietly retreats into the background. True alignment happens when the persona and the inner truth begin to work together rather than against each other. This doesn't mean revealing everything to everyone or dropping all boundaries. It simply means allowing your inner truth to inform your decisions, guide your values, and shape your direction. It means letting some of your authentic thoughts and feelings shape the way you move in the world, instead of constantly suppressing them for the sake of acceptance. When you acknowledge your inner truth, you begin to make choices that reflect who you are, not who you think you're supposed to be. You communicate more honestly. You pursue goals that matter to you deeply. You build connections based on genuine understanding rather than surface-level impressions. You start feeling more grounded because your outer actions finally align with your inner reality. The existence of these two selves is not a conflict, it is an invitation. Understanding both helps you navigate life with clarity. The persona allows you to function in the world, but the inner truth allows you to grow, evolve, and feel genuinely fulfilled. When you bring awareness to the inner truth instead of hiding it, you develop a stronger sense of identity and a deeper connection to the life you are meant to live. Living for acceptance creates an empty life because it slowly replaces your genuine desires with the expectations of others. It begins with small compromises, adjusting your behavior to make someone happy, hiding a part of yourself to avoid judgment, or pretending to be comfortable with something just to keep the peace. These choices seem harmless at first, even practical. But the more you do it, the more you train yourself to seek approval like a requirement rather than a preference. Every decision becomes shaped by how it will be received, not by how it feels to you. Over time, you start losing your sense of direction because you are no longer guided by your inner compass, but by the shifting reactions of the world around you. As this pattern deepens, life becomes less about living and more about performing. You begin to craft an image that aligns with what others want to see, a version of yourself designed to avoid criticism, conflict, or disapproval. You smile when you're not okay, agree when you want to say no, and stay silent when something inside you is asking to be heard. This performance may bring short-term acceptance, but it takes a heavy toll on your emotional and psychological well-being. You begin to experience a quiet emptiness because the life you are presenting is not the life you are truly experiencing. Living for acceptance also creates a cycle of dependency. Each time someone approves of you, it gives you a brief sense of belonging, but that feeling fades quickly. So you seek it again, hoping the next compliment, the next like, the next smile will make you feel valued. It becomes almost addictive, a constant chase for validation that never satisfies you for long. The emptiness grows because the approval you receive is not based on your true self, but on the role you're playing. You begin to sense that people accept the mask, not the person wearing it, and this realization deepens the emotional void inside you. The pursuit of acceptance also makes you afraid of being misunderstood or disliked. You start avoiding situations where your real thoughts, dreams, or personality might be rejected. You shrink your potential so you don't attract attention. You resist taking risks because you fear failure will disappoint others. You hold back your creativity, your voice, your instinct, and your individuality, all to maintain an image that feels safe. But safety built on suppression always leads to emptiness. When you stop expressing who you truly are, life begins to feel flat, repetitive, and disconnected from meaning. Another silent cost of living for acceptance is the erosion of self-respect. When you consistently put others' expectations above your own needs, you send yourself the message that your inner world is less important. Your preferences become secondary, your boundaries weaken, your dreams start to feel unrealistic because they don't fit the narrative others created for you. You begin to feel like a visitor in your own life, watching yourself play a role rather than participating in your own growth. This disconnect between who you are and who you pretend to be becomes a heavy emotional weight. People often confuse acceptance with love or belonging, but they are not the same. Acceptance based on performance is conditional. It lasts only as long as you keep meeting certain expectations. True belonging comes from being seen as you are, without adjusting yourself to fit someone else's version of you. When you live solely for acceptance, you rarely experience this deeper sense of connection. Instead, relationships feel shallow because they are built on a surface-level version of you. You cannot feel truly understood while hiding your real thoughts, nor can you feel truly supported while suppressing your real needs. Living for acceptance drains your energy because you are constantly monitoring yourself, editing your words, controlling your emotions, calculating your actions. Instead of flowing naturally, life becomes a strategic effort to avoid disapproval. This constant self-surveillance creates emotional exhaustion and a feeling of inner emptiness. You realize that even though you may be surrounded by people, you feel alone inside yourself. That loneliness doesn't come from lack of company, but from the absence of authenticity. The emptiness grows because your inner truth is not being lived. Every time you hold back your real self, you create distance between who you are and who you're pretending to be. That gap becomes a hollow space, a space filled with frustration, confusion, and a quiet longing for something more real. And the more you ignore your inner self, the louder that longing becomes. Authenticity is the beginning of personal freedom because it marks the moment you stop living according to borrowed expectations and start living according to your own inner truth. Many people move through life carrying versions of themselves shaped by family pressures, social norms, fears of rejection, or unspoken rules about what they should be. These layers collect over time, covering the real self beneath them. Authenticity begins by peeling back those layers, not with dramatic rebellion, but with honest awareness. It is the quiet decision to listen to your own feelings, to trust your own instincts, and to allow your true preferences, desires, and values to guide your choices. When you begin to live authentically, you start noticing how much of your life has been influenced by the need to fit in or be accepted. You become aware of how often you have silenced yourself to keep peace, how many times you have chosen comfort over growth, or how deeply you have shaped your identity around what others expected from you. This awareness can be unsettling because it confronts you with the realization that you have been living in a way that wasn't fully aligned with who you are inside. But this discomfort is also the doorway to freedom. You cannot reclaim your life until you recognize where you lost it. Authenticity frees you from the constant pressure of maintaining a persona. When you are not pretending, you no longer have to monitor your actions or calculate your responses. There is no role to perform, no mask to hold up, no image to protect. You begin to speak more naturally, act more confidently, and express yourself without the heaviness of self-editing. This ease creates emotional space. It releases tension, reduces overthinking, and brings a sense of inner calm because you are no longer fighting the internal battle of being one thing on the outside and another on the inside. The journey toward authenticity also strengthens your boundaries. When you know who you are, it becomes clearer what you will and will not allow into your life. You begin to say no to people who drain you, to situations that diminish you, and to obligations that exist only to maintain appearances. These boundaries are not walls, they are forms of self-respect. They protect your energy and align your environment with the person you are becoming. Every boundary you create reinforces your sense of freedom because you are finally choosing what supports your growth instead of what satisfies others. As you move forward from this moment, remember that authenticity is not a destination. It is a daily choice, a decision to honor your inner truth even when the world asks you to be someone else. The freedom you seek begins the moment you allow yourself to live without pretending, without adjusting, without shrinking. You do not need approval to be real. You do not need permission to be whole. Your life expands the second you stop performing and start living with honesty, clarity, and self-respect. Step into that truth and let it guide you into the life that truly belongs to you.